Recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crank, for purpose of offering an amendment designated GOSAR 44. Without objection, the amendment is considered read.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to offer this amendment, GOSAR 44, on behalf of my colleague from Arizona. In response to the tragic Dragon Bravo wildfire that it's wreaking havoc on the north rim of the Grand Canyon, this common sense amendment will ensure that land managers prioritize protecting critical infrastructure threatened by wildfires. The Dragon Bravo wildfire was foolishly allowed to burn in the peak of Arizona's summer for several days before any sort of federal response. And unsurprisingly, this fire has now torched over 12,700 acres, and it's destroyed over 80 buildings, including the iconic Grand Canyon Lodge. The fire also leveled a water treatment facility, sending plumes of toxic and potentially fatal chlorine gas billowing into the air. You heard that right, because land managers let this fire burn toxic chlorine gas poured into the Grand Canyon. The National Park Service was forced to close multiple nearby areas, including the Inner Canyon and several popular trails. They also had to evacuate firefighters from the North Rim, exacerbating this already dangerous situation. Chairman Gosar's amendment, which I am proud to offer on his behalf, will require federal land managers to act within 24 hours when a wildfire is within 5 miles of a federal facility that houses water, energy, or wildfire suppression materials. This is a common sense requirement that will greatly reduce the risk of similar disasters occurring in the future. Now, this is certainly an important change that will benefit not only communities in Arizona and my home state of Colorado, but across the West. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that until we address the root cause of this problem, our dire forest health crisis, we will continue to put communities and our cherished public lands in harm's way. That's why I am a proud supporter of the bipartisan Fix Our Forests Act, as well as other important pieces of forest management legislation being considered today. It's critical that we aggressively respond to wildfires in our most at-risk areas and to protect our communities as well as our critical infrastructure. And this amendment and the underlying bill will ensure that we do just that. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Mr. Huffman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I oppose the amendment offered by my colleague from Arizona, and I know that he is proposing this in response to the devastating Dragon Bravo fire that burned the north rim of the Grand Canyon earlier this month and is still burning. It has been devastating to see the impacts of that fire, and I agree with him that we need a full investigation into this administration's response and handling of that fire. That's why I sent letters earlier this week calling for transparency and accountability. These are foreign words to the Trump administration, but we should demand it anyway. It's why I have asked the Inspector General to open an investigation into how the wildfire response was handled, because something clearly went wrong, something broke down. But Mr. Gosar's amendment won't help deliver the accountability people deserve. Worse, it could actually endanger firefighter safety in some circumstances by forcing them into situations where suppression could be catastrophically unsafe. Now, most of the attention paid to this fire has been on the Grand Canyon Lodge, and rightfully so. It's a historic, important place that's been at the heart of the Grand Canyon experience for many Americans. Less attention has been paid to the fire that occurred at a water treatment facility nearby. And according to the Park Service, there were actually major safety concerns with suppressing the fire in that area. I will quote from their press release. This is the Trump administration's press release. Aerial bucket drops were conducted to slow fire movement near the lodge. However, the use of aerial retardant was not feasible due to a chlorine gas leak at the water treatment facility, which required the evacuation of firefighting personnel from critical zones nearby, end quote. Now, this sort of raises a point that is important in considering the blunt instrument of this bill. There are situations like this where there would be a real chance of an explosive reaction if fire retardants were to mix with chlorine gas. This amendment would require that they go ahead with suppression anyway. A one-day response in those exact circumstances, a one-size-fits-all approach that could needlessly force firefighters to walk into chemical explosions. I don't think any of us want to see that. And that's why we need legislation that is more thoughtfully crafted and more carefully written. For their safety, for the safety of communities they serve, I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I yield back.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? I recognize myself. I do support this amendment and would like to commend Chairman Gosar for his leadership in response to the Dragon Bravo fire affecting the north rim of the Grand Canyon. What this amendment will do is ensure that the appropriate precautions are taken to protect critical infrastructure that's threatened by wildfires. Specifically, this amendment would require federal land managers to identify federal facilities that house water, energy, or wildfire suppression materials within 5 miles of a fire's perimeter. The land managers are further required to take necessary actions to protect those facilities. Sadly, we're witnessing the need for this amendment in real time in Arizona, as has been mentioned, with the Dragon Bravo fire that has destroyed a water treatment facility on the North Rim, and it released chlorine gas that is heavier than air, so the hazardous gas settled quickly into the canyon. And this prompted the National Park Service to evacuate firefighters and close numerous trails that were otherwise unaffected by the fire. By not aggressively attacking fires at initial ignition, we are risking economic and ecological calamities, destroyed multi-million-dollar water treatment facilities and toxic gas leaks are outcomes that should simply be unacceptable. This will help prevent such dangers from occurring in the future and be requiring our federal land managers to identify and respond to imminent wildfire threats to critical infrastructure. We can make sure that disasters like the Dragon Bravo fire are minimized or avoided. Again, I urge my colleagues to support the thoughtful amendment from Representative Gosar, and I yield back the balance of my time. Is there further discussion on the amendment? If there's no further discussion, the question is on the amendment offered by Mr. Crank, designated Gosar 44. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to.